He had earned everything: a seat at the top, respect across industries, and yes, a ticket in first class. But the moment he stepped onto that plane, none of it seemed to matter. Within minutes, his success, his title, his dignity were questioned, stripped away by a single word: denied. What happened after wasn't just about a seat on an airplane. It became a moment that shook an entire airline to its core. How does one man, in less than an hour, bring a giant to its knees? For most people, flying first class is a rare luxury. For Marcus Reed, it was just another line item on the expense report. A black CEO who had built his company from the ground up, Marcus was the definition of accomplished years of late nights. Sacrifices and a relentless drive had earned him more than just wealth. He had earned respect, influence, a seat at the table where few people who looked like him were ever invited. That night, he wasn't thinking about breaking barriers or proving himself. He was thinking about rest, a red-eye flight, a packed schedule waiting on the other side. Nothing unusual, nothing he hadn't done countless times before, but the truth about racism is that it doesn't wait for the right time. It doesn't respect titles or achievements. Marcus's success, his money, even his first-class ticket, none of it could shield him from what was about to happen. The airport hum seemed routine. Luggage rolling, announcements over the loudspeaker, passengers lining up. But a collision was coming, one that Marcus couldn't see, but would feel in full. Moments before he boarded, he had no idea this short flight would turn into a moment of humiliation. Marcus stepped onto the jet bridge with the quiet confidence of someone who had earned his place. His boarding pass lit up green, first class, seat 2A. But as he approached the cabin, the first crack in the smooth routine revealed itself. The flight attendant's smile faltered. Her eyes flicked down at the ticket, then back up at Marcus, lingering in a way that wasn't simple procedure. It was suspicion dressed as protocol. She didn't welcome him. She questioned him. First class? The two words weren't confirmation. They were challenge. Her gaze scanned the cabin, then landed back on him, like she was trying to fit the sight of his skin against the reality of that luxurious seat. The passengers behind him grew restless, the line pressing forward, but Marcus stood quietly, extending the ticket again as if to remind her he belonged here. She stepped aside begrudgingly, but the tone was already set. The smiles that greeted others never reached him. When the drink cart rolled by, she passed his aisle without a glance. When meal service began, trays clinked across polished wood, except his table remained bare. Marcus waited. He asked politely. And when the attendant finally responded, it was with the kind of dismissive shrug that cuts deeper than outright. Denial? We're out. Her words dropped like stones, though he had watched her serve the very same meal to the man across the aisle, just moments before. It wasn't about food. It was about erase your subtle dismissal packaged as routine. The message was clear. You don't belong here, no matter what your ticket says. The whispers of other passengers stung. Few said anything aloud, but silence, in moments of injustice, rarely feels neutral. It feels complicit. He sat there, shoulders tight, stomach hollow, not for lack of a meal, but for the weight of dignity withheld. Anger simmered beneath his composure. He could have raised his voice. He could have demanded. But Marcus was measured, practiced. He knew how easily stereotypes are used against him. He chose instead to wait, to observe. To hold the humiliation just a little longer, but not without ticking through the options pulsing in his mind. At cruising altitude, he reached into his briefcase not for food, not for rest, but for leverage. Marcus wasn't just another passenger. He was the CEO of a tech company that quietly powered some of the booking systems airlines relied on every single day. Systems that determine flights, routes, and schedules. Systems this very airline needed, and as the plane cut through the night sky, Marcus decided something quietly but firmly. This insult would not be ignored. The attendants continued there. Routine, oblivious to the storm building in seat 2A. Other passengers reclined, sipped wine, and scrolled through their screens. But Marcus was no longer thinking as a traveler. He was thinking as the man who held the keys to a network vast enough to bring in convenience, delay, or even paralysis to an airline that had treated him as though he were invisible. Every injustice has a tipping point. This was his, and by the time the wheels touched the ground, the airline would learn exactly who they had tried to dismiss. The plane touched down with the usual soft jolt, but Marcus's chest carried a weight heavier than any turbulence. Hours of quiet humiliation had built into something sharper, colder, a determination that silence would not be the final word. As passengers unbuckled belts and reached for bags, Marcus remained still, his mind locked on the decision he had already made. Minutes later, back on solid ground, the airline systems began to flicker. Bookings stalled. Reservations failed. Customers on the other side of the globe found "try again later" plastered across their screens. At first, staff thought it was a minor technical hiccup, nothing unusual. But within the hour, call centers were in chaos, airport terminals buzzing with stranded travelers, and supervisors scrambling for answers. Marcus was no longer just the man they dismissed in seat 2A. He was the quiet storm, amplifying every broken process in their network. The airline that had denied him dignity could no longer deny the truth. He held the power to paralyze them. And yet, beneath the fury, there was a heavier question pressing on him. Why should it take sabotage just to be seen as equal? Why did success, respect, and even money fail to protect him from the oldest barriers still woven into daily life? The unfolding blackout wasn't just a technical disruption. It was a symbolic 1 a.m. empire of indifference grinding to a halt. Because one man refused to remain invisible, by the time executives realized the scope of the failure, the airline's reputation trembled. They wanted to know who did this. Why? But Marcus already knew the answer. This wasn't revenge. It was revelation. And now the world would have no choice but to look directly at what they had tried to ignore. When the airline's booking system finally flickered back online, it wasn't the same company it had been just hours before. Headlines were already forming, customer outrage was mounting, and whispers inside boardrooms grew into panicked demands for answers. For Marcus, the disruption wasn't about petty vengeance, it was about visibility. For one night, an airline that had made him feel invisible could not ignore him. But the truth ran deeper than that one flight, that one meal, or even that one airline. What happened to Marcus is a reflection of something millions face in far less visible ways every single day. Doors are closed, opportunities denied, dignity stripped away not because of merit, not because of ability, but because of skin. Most of those moments never make the news. Most end in quiet humiliation, swallowed pain, and silence. Marcus walked away, knowing he had proved a point, but the victory came with a haunting weight. Because he understood this wasn't just about him. He was a CEO, a man with power, wealth, and resources. But what about the countless others who endure the same treatment without platforms or leverage? What happens when the victim can't make an airline pause or a system break? The story isn't just a dramatic clash in first class. It is a mirror held to society's face, reflecting a truth we'd rather deny, that success does not shield black lives from discrimination. So the question is this: how many more Marcus Reeds will have to be denied, diminished, or dismissed before the system itself is forced to change? Because if one man with power could halt an airline, imagine what could happen if a society chose not to look away.